Okay, gentlemen, we are here at CyberSync at InfoSec 2025. We're here to talk about incident response in 2025. How does it look? And are IR teams ready for what's out there today? Let's have an open discussion. But to begin with, Jens, let's introduce yourself.
Yep, certainly. Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Jason O'Hare. I'm a CISO for a large global company. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm James Moncrief. I'm a Director of Cybersecurity for GRC, particularly in a global data insight organization.
Fantastic. My name is Henrik Kinstedt. I run a consultancy in cybersecurity. I also are the Chief Revenue Officer of a company called Coolspan. Besides that, we are here to talk about incident response. What would you say is the caveats and how should, in sort of the broad term, an incident response team and the readiness look like today?
Yeah, I think certainly with incident response is quite different from one company to another, where if one company's whole revenue is based on selling products to clients versus if all of that's online versus another one that's physical distribution of products, then the incident response is looked upon very differently. From much more focus on business continuity and delivering products versus necessarily keeping systems online. So it can be very, very different, I think, based on what the company actually do as their core business and what generates the money.
And to be honest, an incident response team is not even a thing if you are small enough, isn't it? Or it's very limited.
Yeah.
You work for a fairly large organization,
Yeah.
and you have a sort of a routine and procedure and a plan. Yeah, I assume.
Yeah. And the plan is evolved around the most critical systems, the most critical providers, our partners and supply chain, and our consumers and customers, how to continue doing business, really.
Yeah, fantastic. And your view, what is the incident response team's biggest challenges today?
I think it really goes back to what Jason was saying. I think one of the biggest challenges, of course, there are, the myriad of technical challenges that come with it. But right before that is understanding where and what and why. Jason talked about what do you need to achieve from your response? Where do you need to keep the lights on? What do you need to stop access to? And it almost, Jason mentioned key systems, key suppliers, but really the boxes they fit in are the value chains that they achieve. If it comes to retail, you talked earlier about retail, what the extinction level events to a retailer will be completely different to a manufacturer and be completely different to a data company like mine. It's all based around which value chains are critical. And I've worked in retail before where there's always been debates and arguments over which systems are most important. But actually, those three systems work together. If the customer goes online, buys clothes, orders the clothes, pays for clothes, and then we deliver the clothes, those value chains all have to happen together. So which part of that needs to keep the lights on and which part of that is sensitive? You mentioned small, medium enterprises having an instant response capability is, difficult or, impossible. Even if you outsource that to an incident response retainer or an outsourced SOC, without understanding, that retainer comes in, they need to gather that understanding when they get there. And I think the biggest challenge, and certainly for managed service providers of incident response, is knowing what they're facing when they get there. Is it mapped, is it understood? And a CMDB with 40,000 endpoints in it and systems and configured items is not the same as saying, well, this is the bit that achieves that, and that's how critical it is. And all these pieces and all these critical people are part of that value chain, which has this level of confidentiality, integrity, and availability. and then the next value chain, and then the next one, all the way through delivery and support.
So, coming from that point that having a plan is the foundation, is that fair enough statement? Like, if that is to call upon internal resources or external resources, but have a plan, because I guess when you are hit by ransomware or something like really nasty like that, there's not time really to figure out then who to call. Is that a fair statement?
It certainly is, yeah. If you can have all of the difficult questions early on that often need sort of committees to decide upon what they ought to do in the critical times of needing to cut off areas of the network to stop data being exfiltrated. If nothing has been thought about beforehand, and the escalation processes and knowing who's got the authority to do these key actions that's going to limit the spread of things like ransomware, then doing it on the day is a recipe for disaster often. And we're seeing some of that played out over the recent weeks. Yeah.
I mean, no one can really be prepared for everything. That's clear. And I believe many of our colleagues in this industry has done everything possibly they can.
Yes.
But besides that, what can you do outside the playbooks to prepare for these type of attacks? Any thoughts on that?
Well, you can even look at, like we said, your extinction level events, understanding those things first, which events kill you, which events hurt you, which events annoy you, and then almost understanding like pre-playbooks. Yeah, okay, so there are the levels of technical playbook that are mapped to best practice and pieces, and the attack framework and all those pieces you can do from a system on perspective. But if you don't have that capability, the conceptual understanding of, well, what steps actually need to happen for this to go down, for this to get compromised, for ransomware to be deployed to this key asset of data or this key configuration, what has to happen? There has to be a perimeter breach. Let's say, as an example, there has to be a perimeter breach, however that happens. Then there has to be, an MFA bypass potentially. Then there has to be lateral movement, all without your EDR or whatever tooling picking it up in order for that to happen. So understanding the conceptual attack path of how it might lead to that level of event. And even then, a lot of those events, you might get ransomware, for example. Ransomware might be your highest threat. It doesn't mean it's your highest risk. If your critical data is properly resilient, air-gapped, backed up and everything, and restorable in a sufficient...
We are back to basic with risk management.
Then suddenly ransomware becomes an annoyance. Like, the likelihood is the same, but the likelihood of occurring is the same. But now it's likely with a medium impact, and it could lead to a critical impact. But now that's unlikely because of that piece. So again, business continuity is just you do your risk management, and the risks that remain, you make sure you're covered, and it should be the same in this sense. You can't think of everything, but you can conceptualize, a large portion of at least understanding you. Then, of course, there's the technical layer of that, which is another layer of complexity, depending on the size of your business. But
one thing I sort of pondered about lately, obviously with some recent events, is that speed seems to be of essence. How do you think organizations out there are addressing that specifically?
I think on the recent events, that the sort of methods that the criminals are using to dial into IT support teams, and if they're pretending to be staff, or if they're pretending to be IT support teams contacting staff, a big element of our defense is, as well as all the technical measures that James has alluded to need to be in place, is the education and awareness that if any of our staff see any of the approaches similar, then to sort of raise the alarm, and if they need to disconnect their own device that they might think is connected to stop the propagation of things, then so certainly awareness and education is super important. as well as the technical measures that we need to, immutable backups and such like.
Yeah, of course. So any point there you're thinking about the time here? It seems to go faster and faster. We're talking about, as you said, is a social engineering type of attacks, but also third party and all of that in retail. For example, we've seen a few of those attacks. It makes me think about this. Someone said that how far away is we from like people starting to act really bad? What is critical infrastructure today? When should we take it very serious? Me as a father, if I couldn't get my baby food because all the stores are closed, would I smash a window to grab baby food because they have a special diet or not? I'm not going to answer that because I'm on video here, but most fathers would say the same, I guess, on that question. And so I mean, today, is post systems, is retail actually critical infrastructure? Do we maybe need to take that even more serious?
Yeah, it's you know, it's complex, and you know, in terms of pace, the slowest pace is always reactive. You know, proactivity still wins in terms of understanding. And you know, if you have an incident response retainer and you don't have any form of EDR system, when they turn up, the first thing they will do is deploy EDR systems to see where everything is, and that takes time as well. And you know, if it's already in, you know, the visibility is already gained, it's already trackable through the actions that occurred. Not everyone can afford EDR, of course, but then there are different ways of doing different things. But proactivity wins. And yeah, I mean, you mentioned about the shops and the baby food. You know, it's one of the things when you define a plan, it's all well and good. I absolutely agree, define the plan, but there are certain questions that are all well and good until it happens, like the would you pay ransom question. Everyone says, or a large proportion of people say never. I'll go down fighting until they're going to lose, you know, 25% of their revenue, and it's going to cost them 5% of their revenue to pay it. There are a lot of companies that would take the risk, and that's where an instant response retainer comes with the right advice. People with experience.
That's another subject, or I guess also for the insurance companies. There is ransomware insurance, but how willing are they to pay up those type of ransomwares when we're talking about these major operators, and will that change? But I guess that's another subject for another day. I also think that this should you or should not pay. It's clearly that people do pay. I mean, it's no secret, as you said. If you're a billionaire and you risk not being a billionaire, you actually go bankrupt, or you pay. Their option is quite hard for some people, of course, because of a principle sort of reason. I would not pay, but I will lose millions and millions. So it's not an easy question, is it?
And the ransoms, you know, they must vary widely, but you know, ransomware attackers, they know that an unreasonable demand won't be paid as well. So, you know, a lot of the times I imagine those demands will be made with forethought as to what they charge. Even in, you know, coming from a police background, even in live kidnap situations, the demands are shockingly low a lot of the time. Pay me this and I'll release your son. You know, not little sons, I mean, normally villains kidnapped by villains, but the demands are shockingly low, surprisingly so, yeah, a lot of the time.
So, just to touch base on a subject we already talked a little bit before on earlier today, artificial intelligence, the things in this space is moving faster. We are evolving as an industry. The classic cat and mouse, our opponents is using more and more advanced ways of attacking, and we are, of course, as a defenders, trying to counter that with our measures. Just to look a little bit in the sort of future, short and medium, maybe. I'm not going to ask you to say long term, because I think this it's beyond what we all know. But short and medium, how is this incident response evolving in that matter? Things are going faster. today you can spin up as an attacker a botnet super fast and accurate, fraudulent networks, behaviors, identities. It's instant almost. It's minutes rather than before. It took a lot of effort. Well, how do you see this development?
I think we've got more of a challenge than our adversaries because they've got unrestricted access to anything that they can get their hands on, really. So the level of, or when we saw sophisticated, whether it's phishing or any level of type of attack against us, then using Gen AI to then repeat that on a completely different scale is what we ought to expect. And on the flip side, using it for defense, while most companies are looking to exploit Gen AI in any way they can to make us more productive, we've always got more constrained ability to be able to use the capability to maximum effect because of concerns over confidentiality in our own trade secrets or whatever, getting out and disclosing information that we wouldn't want. So yeah, we've got an uphill struggle, I think, it would be fair. And it'll probably take in the medium term for us to even things out a little, which is similar to most advances in technology, really, where the criminals can exploit what they want.
How do you see the developments in the short to medium?
It's in terms of protection and prevention at the moment, it's really hard because every company, you look at the labels on the names of the companies as you walk around there, AI is now part of their name. If you don't play with AI in certain technological spaces, people seem to think you're left behind. And
But is it a PR buzz, or are they actually providing value with that AI capability? Is there a match towards what the opponents are doing?
well, I think there will, it will start to emerge who's done something new and who hasn't off the back of that. But the point is, it's back to that one of how much do you limit productivity and scale and growth. And so you must be proactive with secure by design. Okay, so encompassing and in wrapping governance around AI early on. Okay, AI needs to be used. We need to harness it. How do we do that? How do we do that securely? You can use AI if you do it a certain way, and you do it through secure architecture and secure design that allows you to do these things. With regards to attackers using AI and defense, all we can hope is that the defense tooling keeps up with the attackers' uses. But that's no different to any other security challenge we've ever had, and it will be the same with quantum, and it will be the same with everything.
Right. I think we could probably continue this discussion for a very long time. I want you to maybe finish with something. Could you give some advice to both the industry but also to the organization out there in regards of incident response from your point of view and from your point of view? What are your sort of take? What should people think about right now?
Yeah, thanks. Certainly to do as much preparation as companies can do before the events, ask all the difficult questions, and have a suite of options to respond to the typical type of attacks that we're seeing nowadays. And then that gives companies the best starting point for the questions, or for as the situation changes away from the scenario that they may have playbooked or tabletopped. Then at least they've included all of the key people in the business to be able to respond as best as they can, really, to changing circumstances. So preparation is key.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you.
And for me, the same thing in the sense of put the effort in. And that doesn't mean you delegate that to someone who quickly writes an instant response plan that doesn't do anything. Put the effort in. Put the effort into the governance that you should anyway, to understand your business, put your effort into then understanding what could happen. And it's up to you, depending on your scale and capabilities and the advice you get. Do you then look at what's the conceptual attack path? Do you look at the MITRE attack framework? Do you have a SOC set up where you can map your tooling to that framework specifically for the attacks that matter to you? You know, do you have plenty of budget and get attack path mapping exercises done? Everything from, you know, zero to the top, to time and preparation to understand what matters, how it could happen, and that you have that plan in place. And those conversations are had, the difficult ones. It needs a committee to come behind and say, these are all the outcomes. This is the decisions we need for containment, for response, for, you know, all these things. Preparation and remembering that we don't want to drop proactive preventative controls just to put detective and response controls in place. You prevent well enough, that won't happen. Obviously it still might, but the assumed breach methodology I think sometimes goes too far in the sense of we're here, we need to keep the lights on, let's start response first. New security team, new company, let's start response first. If you were a greenfield company building something before you launched, you wouldn't do it that way round. You would protect first and then you would make sure that's in. No one starts with business continuity before risk management, and it's the same, but needs to be balanced. So, yeah.
No, I think from my point of view, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, assume a breach is not an excuse to not be prepared. You need to have those plans. You need to be prepared, because a cost of not being prepared is vastly bigger than it's not. So if you can prevent it, of course. I think we can agree that planning, preventing, risk analytics, and all of that is key here, and so on. So with that, I want to thank you for participating.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Thank you.